It's always difficult to talk after lunch. We'll hope everybody will stay up. There was a nice coffee making outside, actually. I'm very happy to be here because I usually get to talk at medical conferences, and they want to know about the science and the papers that we did and all the data collection. And since it's this is a product company, and this is a product conference, I wanted to tell a story that it's a bit different. So a story about the products that we do at Empatica, and also the company itself. I'm a product guy by training. I did design, and I like products a lot. And the company is a bit like a product. And sometimes you have different versions, you do iterations, you have different features, you have a lot of bugs, especially at the beginning, and you try to make it better. And at the same time, you also make products alongside that. And so I wanted to tell you the story from the perspective of our releases in terms of company. This is what we do today. We do products for monitoring neurological diseases. The product that I have here, it's called Embrace. It's our latest product. It's used for monitoring epilepsy, which is a very big problem in the neurology area. And we're helping to get this patient have a better lifestyle and live better. I'll tell you how we started. We didn't really start here, and this is the first iteration of the company. We started in sometime in late 2011, and in 2012 this was our team, very, very small. There was me, there was Simone, Maurizio, the computer science focused on affective computing, which is a science that looks at the physiological signals, so the signals from the body and how they can help understand human behavior. There was Alberto, which is also in the room. He also speaks Polish, by the way, so that you don't have to worry about English, and is a very talented mobile developer. Then we had Ivan, a biomedical engineer, and Daniele, electrical engineer. So we are very complete, and we were very optimistic. And the idea of the company was to monitor emotional states. So we wanted to do devices and sensors and software to understand what people were going through in daily life. We always said that the company was a data company, so that we were only focused on data collection and analytics. And that's what we tried to do. So we did our first product, and actually the product was this one. So it was a mobile phone collecting the data from a device, any device. At least that's what was our idea at the time. And we monitor stress through the sensors and algorithms that we had developed. And then you could look at it. This was for companies for monitoring wellness in the workplace. So this was like, we had a lot of ideas about this. It was a very cool product. We used it ourselves. And to do this, we needed a device. And our idea at the time, this was 2012, that other companies would come along and do a much better job. So we didn't need to worry about doing sensors and a lot of fancy software, because there were other better companies. We just needed to focus on data collection instead. And so we just developed a crappy prototype, and then the crappy prototype was less crappy, and it was decent at one point. And so there was the almost decent version. And so that was our idea for the product. So we went out, I went out, and I tried to sell it to everybody, and it didn't work at all. So the company was basically failing at that point, and we were running out of money. And we thought, what the hell are we going to do? The product is super cool, but nobody seems to want to pay for that. The thing is that for developing the algorithms, we had to develop software and sensors that were very useful. So these were our internal tools. So we had the device, we could do data collection in real time from the phone. I think we were the first ever to use BLE with a wearable device with all raw data streaming directly to the phone and to the cloud. It was very cool. And then we had a cloud system that we had built to do the analytics, collect the data. And so what happened was that while we were running out of money, it turned out that the work that we had done for ourselves was useful also for other researchers. And so there's a lot of people doing research on human behavior, many different clinical applications in hospitals, universities, pharma companies, car companies, insurance companies, and nobody had something like this. So they did something like this, and the other alternatives were a lot less clunkier. And so we sort of starting to sell that, just because we didn't have any other option left, basically. And it actually went very well. So we sell basically the device, which was the biggest point. It was a set of multi-sensor device. The data quality was very high compared to any other wearable there was, and that is available actually. And we also provided all the raw data, so we didn't do like the closed API. We had an open API. You could download all the raw data because it was a research tool. We had done it for ourselves, and so that went very well. We started selling it for more than $1,000 per device, and we gained a lot of clients very quickly. And of course, we get to see the next iteration. So we thought, okay, maybe the data first concept is not like the best. We'll try focus on the hardware and software because that's very important. So at the time this was like sometimes around late 2013, we were selling a lot of devices. And one of our clients was the most famous scientist in the field. She's called Rosalind Picard, and she's a professor at MIT Media Lab. She invented the field of effective computing, which is actually the subject that we had studied ourselves. So it's sort of a hero in the field. And she'd done a lot of studies. One of the most famous was studying kids with autism. And so these kids cannot communicate. So they wanted to put sensors on their bodies to understand their emotional state in real time, so the teachers and parents could understand what's going on. So during one experiment, one of the students during Christmas time borrowed 2 sensors to bring home to monitor his little brother, which had autism as well. And it turned out that some of the signals were not working very well. And when Rosalind looked at the data later on, she found out that the kid had a seizure during the monitoring, and that was the reason why the sensors seemed to not be working. In reality, they were working very well. They just found out that there was a way using the sensors that we have that they could be used to detect epileptic seizures in real time, which wasn't really possible at the time. So more research went on, and we decided, Roz and oh, sorry, it's too sensitive. Okay. We decided to join forces. She had done a lot of this work, and we had all the technology, the sensors and the software ready. So we decided that joining forces, we could go much faster and help people that are suffering from this disease. And by the way, epilepsy is one of the world's most common brain diseases, and it's rising actually. And it affects 65 million people total. And not only that, but in terms of social costs, it's a very high number as well. This is a graph of neurological diseases that cause death, and epilepsy is number 2, but the problem is that is the only one among these ones that affects kids disproportionately. So most of the other conditions, they mainly affect older people. So we thought that we had a reason to be working very hard on this problem. And by the way, most of the researchers believe that the condition that leads to death in epilepsy is mostly preventable. So we could have a way maybe to contribute to this problem. And this was the team at the time, so we had grown a little bit. We had also hired a designer, which is also in the room. So we were still very small compared to what we were trying to do, but we were very, very passionate. So our new plan was sort of, okay, we'll get the sensor done very well. We'll get the software done very well, and we also have the help of understanding what the data means, so like sort of the analytics on the data that was already available. So we started with the first one. This was the normal version. Now it wasn't crappy anymore. The device was slightly better. This was the research version, and we had many clients. We have over 300 clients now. They basically the top hospitals, top universities, top pharma companies. A lot of people use this device to do all sorts of different things. So we had sort of established a reputation of doing a good job on the data collection. Although, we hadn't planned to at the beginning. So this is what the device does in a nutshell. I don't have many graphs like this, I promise. This is the autonomic nervous system. It's sort of the autopilot for the body. And it has 2 branches. It has the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And so with the sensors that we developed in our research device, we can monitor both branches. We have signals that monitor both branches in real life and in real time. So it's very useful if you want to conduct research that wasn't really possible before. So a lot of what happens today in medicine is based on research that was done in the hospital. You cannot study depression in an hospital room, of course. You have to study it in real life. But the only option that you have is to ask people what's going on. And you don't have continuous data, you don't have reliable data, you don't have objective data. Sometimes you don't even have data at all. So the idea that you can have for the first time objective data on the nervous system in real time and outside of the hospital was very interesting for many different applications. And this is what was done for epilepsy specifically. So it's like a specific example. And so this is a couple of the sensors that we use. And just I won't go into the details because it's not the most fun part. But we have a way to detect seizures in real time much better than all the other technologies available, just because of the sensors that we have. So we do, it's a mix of the sensors and the signal processes that goes behind it. And so we sort of arrived to a point that we had good sensors, we had a good algorithm, and we were missing something, because one of the things that we wanted to always do in the company was to provide a nice experience to people. A lot of times in medical technology, you have these very crappy devices, actually, very big. They're just unbearable. And just because people are suffering and they have a difficult disease, most companies think that they don't deserve a first-class design quality. They just give like, this works, that's it. I mean, you don't need any good experience, you don't need any good design. So we didn't really agree on that, and actually it was the opposite. I mean, in my opinion, I strongly believe that if someone is suffering, he should have better stuff than the ones that are not suffering. And for some strange reason, is the other way around. So we wanted to design the first medical device that wasn't only working well, but was also nice to wear, and people could feel proud of it. And so we developed this device, which is much smaller than the stuff you've seen so far, and we called it the Embrace. We designed it so the kids could wear it, and it would be cool. We also have the adult version. And we did a lot of work to take the technology that we had developed and shrink it into a very small form factor. So we wanted to go a step further, the hardware that we had developed so far. So while in sort of the first iteration of the company, hardware was just a means to the end, and it was okay as it was. In the second iteration, we really wanted to make a very high quality product. So we did, although, I mean, I'll show you in a bit, it was very, very painful, but we were able to stick some of the same sensors that we had in the research device. And this is what it looks like. It's also a research device itself, so it's not only a medical quality device. I'll show you in a minute what it actually does. But we can also collect raw data so that researchers and physicians can use it for further research. So it's not only like a closed product like many other that happen to be just evolved proprietary tools, but we wanted to share the data and help the community getting more knowledge on this and some other diseases as well. So what it actually does is very simple. This is one of the apps that we have. It's called the Alert app. So the device there's a seizure is happening on another unusual event, and it detects it, sends the data to the smartphone in real time, and then the smartphone alerts a mom, the doctor, a caregiver that is taking care of this person in real time. And the system is very cool. Alberto here can tell you all about it. It was hellish work to make it work reliably. As they say, the last 2% is the most important part. And sometimes in the end details that you need to make a product like this stable, you have all the drama that you didn't have in the previous part. The second app that we wanted to make is a little different. So we wanted to have a diary for people to understand their daily behavior. This is also useful for people that don't have epilepsy, but in the case of epilepsy, people that have sleep disorders, they have a lot of stress, they don't do a lot of physical activity, can be affected in their health long term. I mean, most of us in the room are very healthy, so nothing happens to us if we go clubbing for 2 nights in a row and go to the university or to work the next day. If someone has epilepsy, this can turn into a cluster of seizures, and so their system is much more delicate. So what we wanted to build is a sort of a forecasting system, like for weather. So it's a machine learning based system that sees sleep quality, stress, physical activity, and then also sees the unusual events like the seizures. So we build a personalized model based on each patient so that we can try to forecast when this next event is going to happen. And of course, this gets better over time. And at the moment, the system is still pretty simple because we mostly want to track simple events, but it will get very sophisticated. And this is something that the industry has never had. So the most researchers in the field, they never had this kind of data. So it's very exciting to be able to see what happens with with all this data collection. The third app, which is not an app, but it's just a boring graph instead, it's probably even cooler because it turns out that being able to control your body also gets to better health. We're sort of aware that you can use meditation, yoga, and other activities to calm yourself. And it turns out that the brain is very sophisticated. And so this is a graph that was done with people that have epilepsy. And they did a biofeedback exercise, biofeedback therapy. So it means that you see the result from your body. So the signals, you sort of see your body in real time on a screen. And you learn to control that over time. So you can think about it as a breathing exercise, for example, that you see the breathing flow and then you learn to relax. Some people just breathe too fast and you just need to go slower. So these experiments were done on people with epilepsy and with this biofeedback therapy, and they found that they could reduce seizures by over 50% on average, which is staggering considering that it's like you're calming your brain in a sense, for real. And they could measure it. So it's very exciting. So one of the next exciting steps for like products like this is to be able to build an app that can actually do that daily for people. And instead of having to go like to a very expensive therapist that charges you a lot of money and you have to queue a lot. We launched the device on a crowdfunding campaign. We wanted to do something different again, because usually, medical devices, they charge like $2,000 just because they can, and they don't care. I mean, in the end, the product is good, and there's not a lot of other opportunities, so it's okay in an economic sense that you charge a lot of money. But we wanted to give the possibility of people that have no financial means to access new technology. So we did a campaign with the Epilepsy Foundation, and we decided that for each device that was sold, we would donate one with a kid they couldn't afford it, so that at least we will use some of the money from the early adopters and some private donors to help people that have lesser financial means. And it went very well. We sold over 60,000 units and 6,000 units, sorry. And so we're pretty happy about it. We're actually starting to deliver it now. We were pretty late as any decent crowdfunding campaign. Actually, I'll tell you why we were late. So this is the product inside. It looks very cute and simple from the outside, but it's not so much the same when you open it up. And we had to do a lot of work to make things very, very, very small. And there was quite, I mean, if you think that we started the company thinking we're not an hardware company, we just do algorithms. We went pretty far along, and but it was very difficult because one of our main points was to be able to give a small looking device to people that would be proud to wearing it. But this turned out to be somewhat difficult in the production phase, so we had to do a lot of testing because this is it's not like other consumer devices. You need to be reliable all the time. It needs to send an important message, so it's better. It better be connected to the phone all the time, and you better know when things are not working. So we had to do a lot of testing so that we could make sure that the product is reliable. And we had the help of some very tough users. If you ever need to develop some hardware and want to find good testing opportunities, you go with kids, you won't go wrong. They don't give a damn about like delicacy. It's like expensive or not. They just mash it all around. So it's pretty effective. And we also did a lot of testing to see if it's working in all conditions that are going to be used in. One thing that sort of product people, engineers don't think about is how sort of normal people behave, and they sometimes behave very differently, and they don't even care that much about technology. I mean, why should they? Actually, I mean, it's just the technology should work and get out of the way. I mean, it shouldn't be looked around for. And so this is some of the production. We made a few iterations of the device, and we were, as I said, sort of late for. Now we are 6 months late in the delivery, so it's not as bad as other crowdfunding campaigns, but it was very bad nonetheless because of the users that we are selling to. We're not selling to early adopters or people that can stay without the latest gadget for another month, and probably they won't even remember. I don't even remember like all the crowdfunding campaigns I've subscribed to that I didn't receive the product for. But in our case, it was a little different, and we were late because we had to spend a lot of time on reliability and testing that you cannot just anticipate. I mean, things happen, and you have to sort of take a look. And I guess the most interesting thing that I learned from integration standpoint is that it's very cool to say that you do a product end to end, because we do. I mean, we do everything in the company, from the sensor design, production, the software design, the testing, all the data collection, all the data algorithms. And it's good because you can control all the experience, and if something is not working on one side, you can fix it on the other. But on the other end, you cannot blame anyone else when something doesn't work. So the thing is that a product like this is very complex. You have a lot of moving parts. You have all the parts in the hardware. You have the sensors. You have the Bluetooth antenna. You have the cloud system, the software apps. Then you have different mobile phones. Then you have the data collection protocols. You have the algorithms that are changing, and you want to provide always the same experience, but you want to improve the product. So the crazy thing is that when you move one part on one side, it sometimes breaks things in most of the other parts that you don't even realize, and it takes you sometimes to fix it, sometimes even to realize what was broken. So you have to pay a lot of attention to new things that you put in place, and how you're controlling the flow. And this was a big change from our earlier days as a like normal startup company. We're still a startup company, but we're sort of wiser now that you cannot just do things and just push them out. I mean, sometimes you have to pay attention and do things carefully. So one of the challenges is in this new iteration of the company is to try to make things very fast and very agile, in a very agile way, at the same time making sure that the product is bulletproof. So it's a very, very tricky balance. And even within the team, we have, I'd say not fights, but of course there's different souls in the company. Like the people who are like the startup people who just want to go as fast as possible, like myself, for example, and the people who actually see the problems and have to fix them, and they're sort of the less reckless ones that want the product to be as safe as possible, even if it takes longer. So it's a good it's a very good compromise, and it's an interesting exercise in trying to make a product and push it forward. And of course, this was much more difficult than anything we had built before. So now we are almost over. We are starting to ship the products, and we have a great feedback from the users. They're very happy. We wish that we can make more much faster, but of course it takes longer because of the things that I just explained. And we're sort of looking at the next iteration of the company, which is, again, as you can see, the titles of the iterations, they're more wishful than actual reality, but sort of the platform stage. So once you have we've done a lot of work in the hardware, software, and algorithms. You've built some tools that are useful not only to you, but also to other people that are doing something differently. So if you're trying to make something useful for people that are suffering, you should also open up some of that stuff. So this is what the latest stage looks like. And we're actually growing the team. Of course, actually, if you're interested, you can take a look. We're missing still a lot of people because things are getting a bit more complicated than were before. So we are trying to hire as much as we can. And so what we're looking at now is to help people do things with the things that we've done. So the core of the company is still to study human behavior in daily life. And we have a lot of ideas of things that have not been really looked at in the past that we can take a look at and provide a good experience. But of course we can, I'm going to show you some of these. These are some of the medical applications that would be of interest for us, and I think they're interesting for just because of the populations that are suffering with these diseases. So there's autism, sleep disorders, anxiety disorders, and pain disorders, and many other things. So these are sort of the medical applications. There's also some interesting consumer applications that are fun, like gaming, for example. I cannot tell you too much about it, but you can guess from the image, I guess. And also education and other things that are more on the consumer side of things. And of course, the company won't be able, like never, to do all of these things. It's already good if we can make one pretty well. But at the same time, we want to, our philosophy is always to collaborate with people that are doing interesting things, and also to open up some of the tools that we build. So we still sell our research device, which with a complete open API that people can use and do their own applications. We try to support people that are trying to build software on top of what we've done. And we're even looking at using our algorithms to support more applications. So we're trying to help things go faster if we can. And I think one of the, at least for me, which sort of goes circle to where we started, we started the company trying to look at emotional responses and human behavior in general, because it's something that is very poorly understood even today. And we sort of derailed along the way on something that is much more specific and probably less complicated in a sense, than this application. But what I think is something cool to look at for the future is sort of a way to take these signals and understand how each of you is feeling and being able to share the experience. And in a sense, the first product that we did, sort of the stress monitoring, the idea was that if in a small office, am I doing okay? Yeah, that was the alarm. Sort of in a small office, you have people that are working together, and they influence each other with their behavior and their emotions. And the same goes into the family, in a couple. Actually, you can imagine like girlfriends and boyfriends. So like very complicated system as well. So one thing that could be possible in the future with this device, probably maybe with a follow-on model, is be able to share this experience and trying to understand more about ourselves. And so that's sort of what we're looking at in the very very far away future, who knows. But in the meantime, we're working on something that is helping people having a better lifestyle today. And that's it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Matteo.
If you have any questions.
Sure, I have the first one, to be honest. But I need to start that I do adore the way you talk about the medical market and the way how you try to set the price for this tool. And I also read that you are helping the families and people who are not, struggling with having enough money to buy these devices. It's really great. But in your presentation, you mentioned something about forecasting such an event, and isn't it like self-fulfilling prophecy? Like if you know that it's going to happen in a couple of hours, how it goes?
Not really. Sometimes it does. Some people have auras, so they sort of have a feeling that something is going to happen within 10 seconds. What is difficult and what we're trying to do is understand your patterns over time. So I think we were the first ones doing wearable that tracks months of data. For example, myself, I probably have years of data, continuous data. So you see the trends, even in stress or sleep disorders. You see the trends in seasons, different nights over years, when you're growing older, what you're eating. And it's very interesting. Medicine has never had something like that. How medicine is organized, you go to the doctor, it tracks you like once a year. The stress, there's a stress measure that you go to the doctor, like randomly, like every 3 months, let's say. It doesn't matter that you might have had a car accident before going to the doctor, and then your stress might be affected. But it just tracks you in that point. Blood pressure is the same. how the hell do you know what happened before or what is going to happen after? So the idea that you don't have continuous data, it's a big problem. So it turns out that when you have continuous data, sometimes you can see patterns that are impossible to see for any patient, any physician, any machine today. And this is what looks like can happen in some areas for some patients for epilepsy, like weather forecast. Basically, like, sure, I mean, you know if something is going to happen in 10 minutes because you look at the clouds, but what if you can know it 2 days in advance or even several hours? You can organize yourself. And so this is for in this specific case, but it will be possible, I think, even for other areas.
I also noticed that you touch the device and it starts to do something.
Yeah, no, because it's actually a watch. Because you can touch it and it shows you the time. Okay. So it's 4:30. It's like one light for the hours, one for the minutes, so that people don't know that you're like doing something weird. They ask me anyway, but I mean, no.
So the first question there, and then the second here.
Me? Okay. So thank you for your presentation. And my first question is, what kind of machine learning algorithms or technologies are you using? And the second question is, what's the battery life of such devices, and what is your approach to the fact that they need to be charged from time to time, and the user has to get rid of this device of his hand?
Yeah, unfortunately, you have to recharge them. That's still probably the sucker of the technology. Our research device lasts 2 days in a row with all the raw data collection, and the Embrace at the moment it's a little over a day. It was still in the testing phase, but the goal is to have it for 5 days. I mean, you can switch sensors on and off, so you can go further, but the idea is to have like sort of a week in terms of, which sort of a good unit of time. It is not slow to recharge, so you can actually take it out while you're having a shower, for example. So you can like recharge it every day a little bit. But yeah, the goal is to have it for a week. And the machine learning, I mean, if you want, we can talk later a little bit. If you're interested, we use at the moment mainly the data sets that we collected in the hospital, because it's not like classic machine learning that you can, it's tricky to be sure that an event is a seizure, so you have to do it in the hospital with a gold standard, which is an electroencephalogram with video, and then you basically train the classifier with the data set, and then you put it into the wild. And it's sort of the tricky part for the machine learning is that people are not sure that they're having a seizure. Sometimes an event that looks like it could be a seizure is not. So people believe it is, but the algorithm, which is usually more reliable, say it's not. But who do you trust? And so do you trust the parents that are looking at the kid, which doesn't look like it's doing well, or do you trust the algorithm? And the algorithm has a sensitivity of 96% and the lowest false positive rate in the industry. So it's basically the best that's available, but still it can miss something. So it's sort of tricky to apply like pure like the by the book machine learning to this specific case.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. I have many questions. I really like your talk. I would like to know, apart from the Kickstarter campaign, did you have investors coming from outside? How long did it take to take the big investment? And also, since I work in a fabrication laboratory and we make the prototypes for wearable companies, do you have like a specialist in wearables, or you have an in-house laboratory? You send the PCB outside. How you work?
Yeah. So on the funding side, we had only a seed round. A couple of years after we started the company, we had $2 million in a seed round from private investors, and then we had revenues from the products. So the company is basically profitable. Which is very good for a startup, I guess, because there's only one way to buy independence from investors, is that if you don't need the money desperately, then you're in a much better position to decide to do things for the long term instead of having to do things for the short term, or just to do what investors think it's the right thing to do, which is not always the right thing to do. I mean, And the second question was on the production. We did the first devices. We sort of did it ourselves. We did the PCB outside with external suppliers, and we had to change a lot of them because people are, I mean, to find good quality in suppliers is very difficult. So we had to change many suppliers. We did 3D printing in the first devices. We then went to sort of a more industrialized system with injection molding for the latest research device, and we also do overmolding. So I mean, it got quite complicated because of the design. You had like wires running inside the plastics, so we had to go to a very specialist production. We do the production in Korea, and which, I mean, you have basically a few places in the world to do small electronics like mobile grade dimensions, and for the Embrace, I mean, there was like no other option that to go either to China, but we're not a big company. I mean, we cannot command a million units right away, so we had to go to Korea because they work with smaller companies as well. And yeah, so now we have like an industrial process. We sort of, over time, we sort of build the expertise, and yeah, sort of like growing as we go. We did our own acceleration, like kicks in the butt from mine. It was pretty useful.
Hi, Matteo.
Yeah.
Nice talk. I already knew the product. I'm very interested in how wearables can help, especially on anxiety disorders, ADHD, and depression. One thing that I realized is like I make many investigations in this kind of wearables, in this kind of technology. Yours appears to be one of the most reliable and the most interesting one, but there is a lot of data talking and the data gathering. It's essential to create insights and so on. But when you think about that you are moving into new ground, for example, curing or tackling problems like anxiety and depression and sleep disorders and so on, are you guys thinking about also to cooperate with some sort of therapy or some sort of behavioral software that helps the person to actually change the behavior, becoming more aware and not just collecting data, which is valuable. I'm not saying that it's not valuable, but like, are you guys planning this next step as well?
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, for some of these conditions, the way, I mean, what we're useful for is just providing tools and instruments for other people's work. I'll tell you an example. In autism, for example, there's a lot of, I mean, one belief about autism is that like one disease, like very monolithic, that was the sort of the historical perception. And now they discovered that basically every kid is different. I mean, there's not like one type of autism. There's a spectrum that it's very, very granular. So you cannot expect a therapy to work on one kid and then work the same on the other. So the only way that you have is to have professionals, hospitals, researchers, teachers, parents, they sort of take the tools and understand what the right mix is for their kid, for example. So in this way, of course, we couldn't expect to solve the problem ourselves. That would be, I mean, even being like a reckless startup, I mean, we're not that stupid. So or naive. I mean, of course. I mean, you can think you can like solve all the problems, but most of the times with these complex situations, you need to know what you can do best and help other people be successful in the work. So I'd say it's very different for each of the conditions. Overall, you sort of never had the possibility of collecting data continuously and objectively, and without people realizing that you're collecting the data because you forget about it. So this is a sort of a new frontier. But at the same time, I mean, you need to collect data and understand, but in many different conditions, there's many different ways that you can approach the problem. So we work with a lot of hospitals, a lot of researchers. Sometimes we provide the hardware. We don't do any software. Sometimes we do the software. Sometimes we do everything and they just do the therapy at the end. And so it depends on the application. I think our goal is just to help the system get better with the things that we've done. So whatever that is, I mean, we figure it out as we go.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, Matteo. Thank you for the talk. You kind of answered my question in one of the previous answers, but you said about getting the manufacturers and suppliers. You mentioned that you have some partners in Korea, companies that work with you. But I'm more wondering about the roots, the beginning. When you were the smaller company, how did you approach the prototyping? Did you have some companies that you worked then, like to create the hardware to test on it, or did you do it on your own using some? Is there like a path that a small team of developers and hardware guys can go through to have
Yeah,
some
I mean, I guess we were fairly lucky because the funding team, we could, I mean, in a very small scale, we could cover all the parts that we needed. So I had done digital fabrication at school. Simone had done robotics, and during his PhD, Daniela was an electrical engineer. He was part-time at the time. So we sort of knew our way around in a very small capacity. And you sort of, I guess, what you try to do is talk to people that you know are very smart, so they wouldn't recommend you like stupid stuff or introduce you to useless people, although that happens anyway. I mean, but you sort of like try to do the selection well. So you try to like sample contacts and your network. It helps if you're aware, at least, even if you cannot do the job yourself. Even if you can just study the problem and have an understanding, you can have a better interaction with the supplier. That doesn't necessarily prevent you from getting screwed big time many times. So that happened to us, of course, as well. I think we changed probably, I don't know, like 7 or 8 PCB suppliers over the years. We went from the like very clueless to the very professional. Same with all the other processes. You sort of like have to try, you stumble, like then you try to go on. But yeah. And one other thing that I sort of, our approach has been when there was something complicated that we needed done and we didn't know how to do it, we would hire someone very good. I mean, we try to find someone very good, and then we try to learn as much as possible, and then to internalize the expertise over time. And so that because when you, I mean, suppliers are very useful, and sometimes you work with great people. The thing is that interacting with different companies slows you down. So if you can control the system as much as possible, you go much faster. And so that's sort of the guiding principle. Sometimes you just have to work with people. I mean, you cannot do the PCBs yourself. I mean, that's like.
Last chance for asking a question.
Talk too much.
Yeah. Then if not, thank you, Matteo, for a great talk.
Thanks.
And there are sweets from organizer.
No.
Be careful.
I'm trying to lose weight.
Take your wrist off.
I'm
while
training
eating.
for a triathlon, and I am like super sweet tooth.
Just take your wrist off while eating.
I'll probably finish it by tonight. I mean, if a good estimate. Thanks a lot.